Big question, how can we use creativity to make useful items? Farida sat cross-legged on the floor of her room, surrounded by colorful pieces of fabric, a small sewing kit, and a bundle of yarn. She was deep in thought, her fingers absent-mindedly playing with a loose thread from a piece of cloth. The school fair was just around the corner, and she had promised her friends that they would create something special this year. But what could they make that was both useful and unique? The question echoed in her mind, sparking curiosity. How can we use creativity to make useful items? The next day, Farida gathered her friends Amina, Chidi, and Ngozi at their usual spot under the large mango tree in the schoolyard. The tree's broad branches provided shade and a sense of privacy, perfect for brainstorming ideas. Farida pulled out a piece of fabric from her bag and held it up for her friends to see. "I was thinking," she began, "what if we create something with textiles? Something we can make with our hands that people will actually use." Chidi raised an eyebrow. "Like what? Clothes? We're not tailors, you know." Farida shook her head with a smile. "Not clothes, exactly. But what about simple items like bags, scarves, or even little pouches? We could use basic stitches, and if we get creative, we could come up with all sorts of designs." Amina's eyes lit up. "We could knit or crochet some items too. My grandmother taught me how to crochet last year, and it's really fun." Ngozi, always the practical one, nodded thoughtfully. "And we can sell them at the fair. It'll be our own little business." The idea quickly took hold, and soon the group was buzzing with excitement, each friend contributing their thoughts and ideas. They decided to split their efforts. Farida and Amina would focus on sewing, Chidi would knit, and Ngozi would try her hand at crocheting. That afternoon, they all gathered at Farida's house. Her mother, always supportive of their creative endeavors, had cleared a space for them in the living room and provided them with a variety of materials: fabric scraps, yarn, needles, and even a few old buttons. Farida started by showing the group some basic stitches she had learned from her grandmother. "This is the running stitch," she explained, demonstrating on a piece of fabric. "It's one of the simplest stitches. You just go in and out of the fabric in a straight line." Amina practiced alongside her, occasionally pricking her finger but determined to get it right. Chidi, on the other hand, was focused on knitting a small square, his fingers moving rhythmically as he worked the yarn over the needles. Ngozi watched them both, her hands busy with a crochet hook as she started on what she hoped would become a small, decorative pouch. The room was filled with the sound of gentle chatter, the click of needles, and the occasional giggle as they shared stories and tips. It was in these moments that they realized crafting was not just about making things, it was about spending time together, learning from each other, and creating something out of nothing. As the days passed, the group became more confident in their skills. However, they soon encountered their first challenge of time. The school fair was fast approaching, and they still had several items to complete. The pressure was on, and the fun, carefree atmosphere began to shift into one of quiet concentration. Farida noticed the change and decided to address it during one of their sessions. "I know we're all feeling the pressure," she said, looking around at her friends. "But remember, this is supposed to be fun. Let us not forget why we started this project in the first place: to enjoy ourselves and create something meaningful." Her words resonated with the group, and they agreed to take a step back and focus on one item at a time, rather than rushing to complete everything. They also decided to divide the work more effectively. Farida and Amina would focus on sewing a few key items, while Chidi and Ngozi would concentrate on knitting and crocheting accessories like scarves and pouches. This new approach allowed them to work more efficiently, and soon, they found their rhythm again. They even discovered ways to combine their skills, adding crocheted edges to sewn bags or attaching wear-upon flowers to scarves. The possibilities were endless, and each new idea fueled their excitement. As the fair day drew closer, the group began to see the fruits of their labor. Farida and Amina had sewn several small bags, each with a unique design, using different fabrics and embellishments. Chidi's whereupon scarves were soft and warm, perfect for the cooler weather, while Ngozi's crocheted pouches were both functional and stylish. But the most rewarding part was not the items themselves, it was the sense of accomplishment that came with creating something from scratch. Each stitch, each knot, each design represented hours of effort, learning, and creativity. The group had not only made items for the fair, but they had also discovered the joy of crafting and the satisfaction of bringing their ideas to life. As they packed their creations into boxes for the fair, Farida couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had started with nothing but a few scraps of fabric and yarn, and now they had a collection of handmade items, each one reflecting their individual talents and the power of teamwork. The school fair was a lively affair, with stalls set up around the schoolyard selling everything from homemade snacks to handcrafted jewelry. Farida and her friends set up their stall with care, displaying their items on colorful cloths and arranging them in neat rows. A handmade sign reading "Textile Creations" by Farida and friends hung proudly above their table. As the fair opened, students, teachers, and parents began to browse the stalls. Farida watched nervously as people approached their table, hoping they would appreciate the work they had put into their creations. To her relief, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People admired the unique designs and craftsmanship, and many even asked about the techniques they had used. One woman picked up a small pouch and turned it over in her hands. "This is beautiful," she said, smiling at Ngozi. "Did you make this yourself?" Ngozi nodded, beaming with pride. "Yes, I crocheted it. It was a bit tricky at first, but once I got the hang of it, I really enjoyed it." The woman nodded appreciatively. "It's clear that a lot of love and effort went into this. I'll take it." Throughout the day, more and more people visited their stall, purchasing items and leaving with smiles on their faces. Farida and her friends were thrilled not just because they were making sales, but because they were sharing something they loved with others. As the fair came to a close, the group gathered around their stall, exhausted but happy. They had sold nearly all of their items, and the few that remained would be perfect gifts for family and friends. But more than the success of the day, they had learned something valuable: the power of creativity. By using their hands and minds, they had transformed simple materials into something meaningful and useful. They had faced challenges, learned new skills, and most importantly, they had done it together. As they packed up their remaining items, Farida couldn't help but reflect on the big question: how can we use creativity to make useful items? The answer was clear in the smiles of her friends and the satisfaction they all felt. Creativity was not just about making things, it was about expressing yourself, solving problems, and finding joy in the process. And with that thought, Farida knew that this experience would stay with them long after the fair was over, inspiring them to continue exploring their creativity in new and exciting ways.